Okay, Dane Rose here. Thank you so much for joining me. Week number 11, Combat and Understand Chauvinism. I'm going to take a different spin than the surface look at chauvinism. The surface look focuses primarily on gender, male-female relationships and distribution of power and wealth relating to gender. And yes, chauvinism has that face. Women are denied spiritual rights in all of the major religions today. Women statistically make 30% less money. There are very few women in positions of power in all of the major gods of Western culture. Companies, politics, and religion. These and science also. If you look at the Nobel laureate lineup, is again predominantly men. So this is a surface chauvinism based on gender. And it is relatively well understood, meaning there's not that many people that don't know about it, and there's not that many people who don't think it's a bad idea, particularly in the West, which is obviously, if I'm speaking English, our demographic. So why am I focusing on chauvinism? Why is it so important? Because beneath the gender question of chauvinism, there is another level of chauvinism that's much more deeper, and it affects both genders equally. Here's what I mean. The deepest chauvinism, of course, refers to a polarity. In this case, the devaluing of women over men. That is, within the gender polarity, the masculine and feminine pole expresses itself as men and women. But masculinity and femininity is part of the duality of reality and is way more complex and varied than just the gender expression. And I'm going to suggest that the devaluing of women relative to men begins with a devaluing of feminine energy and the feminine pole in all areas of life relative to the masculine and the masculine pole in all areas of life, including gender. I'm going to suggest that there is at least a 30% bias, and in some cases much more, that values anything that is masculine. And I'm going to suggest that this pole, as the Chinese rightly pointed out in the yin and yang expression of the multiverse, runs through anything. So in a battery, the negative pole and the positive pole, the feminine and masculine. In the polarity between thought and emotion, the feminine pole, thought, the masculine pole. In geometry, the point and the circle. Point, focused, strategic energy, masculine. Diffuse awareness, feminine. The line and the circle. In any expression, in any part of reality, the internal world, the external world, internal feminine, external masculine. Now, we're now in a world where many women are outperforming many men in the masculine pole, meaning there are more thoughtful thinkers. among some women than many men. There is more strategic follow-through in many women than many men. Women have been shown to make excellent leaders of corporation. The leader, the point, the masculine. The follower, the feminine. And if you're cringing a little bit, no, why call everything that's bad feminine? It's not bad. See, a scientist does not say, when building a battery, the positive pole is more important than the negative pole in the battery. That is absurd. They are both equally required to create electricity. An electrician does not say that the plug, masculine, points, and the outlet, feminine, receptacle, the little holes, that one is more important than the other. This is absurd. It is only in the cultural dimension that we as a culture, for the last 4,000 years plus, have decided somewhat rationally and somewhat irrationally in the traumatic context. What I mean to say is the Earth, in the last 4,000 years, has gone through more chaos and more trauma in wars, this and that and the other, than in most other periods of its history. And in a traumatic situation, which is a sick situation, for there to be trauma present, it is a life and death experience. This means the situation is not going very well. This means there is a problem. A lot of it is caused by our human software and its imbalance. So it's kind of a catch-22. So what happens in a war when someone's racing at you with a machete to chop you to pieces, etc., is the body has a fight, flight, freeze mechanism that that in an effective strategy dissociates from all emotion, feminine, and does the strategic thing to keep the body alive, masculine. So because the trauma response in a turbulent period of history that is effective, meaning if you can lie sociopathically and get past the German guards and you're a Jew, you stay alive. If you're emotional and empathic, you're dead. So there are cultural situations, war being one of them, where the sociopathic state, thought without empathy, keeps the body or the family alive more than the empathic state. This is an element. I'm trying to make sense with why, and so just think about this. If it makes sense to you, great. Otherwise, apply the 80-20 rule. Ignore 80% of what I'm saying. But be aware, just what a turbulent amount of time these last 4,000 years are. And our history shows that around 8,000 and prior, it was matriarchal. We had goddess religions. Now, this is a little bit in debate. You have to kind of lean a little bit more towards Graham Hancock's archaeological narrative than some of the consensus. But within a patriarchal culture, for example, the male body is more adept at embodying the masculine in some areas. That's why we have Olympics for men and Olympics for women, because there are physiological advantages for an adverse situation. And because we've been in so much turmoil as a species, there is an unconscious assumption that because the masculine traits have kept us alive more than the feminine traits of empathy, of diffuse awareness, of community building, etc., etc. Sociopathic traits are more advantageous in scarcity. A sociopath can look right at their supposed best friend and say, no, we don't have any food, and then go in the kitchen and eat the last of the ham. A sociopath can do that. An empath invites their friend in, they share the ham, and they're both, and the individual has less food. And so in a scarce, hostile environment, the sociopathic trait, which is the masculine strategy devoid from feminine empathy in that particular polarity of masculine-feminine energy, seems to have some advantages. And so this has been worshipped. The mistake as we move into periods of relative prosperity, and yes, having electricity, water, iPads, plane flights, free apps is an enormous leap forward in some areas of prosperity. As we move forward out of aspects of trauma, and statistically per capita violence is actually going down per capita, not up, even while the news plays it more and more vividly, so we have the experience of never seeing as much before. And because there's more people on the planet, there's always a news camera somewhere that can take some horrible thing and blast it all over everyone's TVs for the next 24 hours. So by appearances, our exposure to violence is going up, but per capita it's going down. Now, there's a great book, by the way, Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. I highly recommend that book. As we move into abundance, the sociopathic masculine becomes the enemy of moving on Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a species from survival up to, belonging, and then pleasure and joy and meaning and all this. These things require feminine energy. So what we're seeing is that physiologically, for example, a male body that's trained with a hunting dynamic is going to outperform most female bodies in a war. But a female with more feminine energy, who's more connected with people, may run a better company. The statistics in some studies show that women don't make some of the egregious mistakes that testosterone lead to in business. Big bets that lead to layoffs and ultimately a weakening of the company, even though there's this big rush of the deal and all that. So we're moving into a reality where feminine traits are starting to make the difference. The information age and social media is a part of that, because you can go to the gym and beat the next black belt, but that doesn't help you on social media, does it? It helped you not be robbed when you were carrying your potatoes from the farm that you had to haul the plow and do this and that and the other. That masculine brawn helped you. But now it just means you can't type. So we're moving from a world in which masculine traits had an edge in both men and women, meaning effeminate men didn't do very well in the war either. So it's actually a deeper bias than the male-female bias. And the more we climb Maslow's hierarchy of needs into meaning and fulfillment and all of that, the more prominent the feminine role is. Because there's only so far that brawn and a spear and a gun can take you. it doesn't lead to, for example, in the peak of Maslow's, to the fulfillment of self-expression. For that, you need deep masculine-feminine balance. The full potential is released with balance, where the feminine traits with me and the masculine traits with me, and the feminine posture that I can take and the masculine posture that I can take function in perfect unity, in partnership. That's where we're going. That's who we are. So we're moving out of this, this period, and it's important to know that the bias goes deeper than gender. To men valued their brawn more than their own emotions. Women valued men's brawn more than the man's feelings. So that the bias towards the masculine was within both sexes. And men were basically raised to protect the women, to be slaughtered, to make money, to provide. And that was what they were valued for. And that is still present today, and to some extent, where surveys consistently show that wealthier men able to provide are considered more attractive to women than not. This is the women saying, sure, I have better sex with my poet friend. Sure, I value the feminine, but not as much as I value the masculine in the man. Sure, it'd be nice to talk and da-da-da-da-da. But if I had to choose between a great conversationalist, da-da-da-da-da, and a multimillionaire, I'll pick the multimillionaire. In other words, this is women voting to prioritize masculinity, action, over femininity, empathy, and communication. So the chauvinism goes deeper, meaning it's very cooperative. Both sexes are participating in a devaluing of feminine energy and an overvaluing of masculine energy. And the more there is a crisis, the higher this chauvinism exists, the more abundance there is. In other words, when the woman doesn't have to decide, let's say the woman in Denmark. It's a wonderful country, by the way. You go to Denmark, you interview people, it's an entirely different reality over there. The woman in Denmark is not going to have her quality of life change much one way or the other, whether she's with a billionaire or with an unemployed person. Standard of living is about the same in the way that system works. So when you have an environment of abundance without scarcity, feminine values gain sway because spears are not needed. Money does not stave off scarcity because it isn't scarce to begin with. And all of the juice in our humanity is in our feminine side, in both men and women. Our emotions are feminine in both men and women. Now, emotions have been shamed in men, particularly in America, for hundreds of years. Everything feminine in men has been denigrated and shamed, even as it's paid lip service to. I wish I could find a man who could talk. I can't tell you the number of women. You see how much I talk. It's too much talking. So it's a lip service. But when a human being is in fear or scarcity, they look to the masculine in both men and women. The one who is strong in assertiveness, masculine, not the one who's strong in receptivity, feminine. But the pole, just to be clear, breaks down equally, meaning every polarity in the universe has its opposite. And just like the outlet, the outlet isn't more valuable than the plug isn't more valuable than the outlet. You need both. That's the definition of a polarity. So within the yin-yang, of which in that polarity, the feminine is the yin, the masculine is the yang. Within the yin-yang, for example, you cannot give. This is how you know you're dealing with a receiver. You cannot give without someone receiving, because it's really a process of giving. I initiate the give, and you accept the gift, and that completes the process, meaning there is no giving without receiving. There's no receiving without giving. There's no communication without a speaker and a listener. Now, they can switch roles as much as they want, but if you speak and nobody listens, there's no communication. So there's give, and its opposite is receive. Which is more valuable in our culture? Do you want to be a giver or a receiver? Well, the giver is considered strong, masculine. The receiver, weak. Nobody wants to be that. But how can the giver be so important if they can't exist without a receiver? There's no one to give to. The scientist who's designing a battery doesn't say, let's make this battery only 20% negative charge and 80% positive charge, because the positive is more important than the negative. That's an idiotic battery designer. Because as soon as that 20% gives out, there's another 30% of positive charge wasted, because the real gift of a battery is electrical flow. The real gift in the partnering of masculine and feminine energy, whether in gay people, I'm not all up on the latest cool terms, but within any relationship, there is no chemistry and no flow without a giver and a receiver in a given moment in time, without a speaker and a listener, without a teacher and a student, a leader and a follower. All follow me, and nobody follows. Or someone tell me where to go, and nobody speaks. There's no flow. There's no movement. The dynamic process that is life is the partnering of these polarities, giving and receiving, speaking and listening. And it is our culture's erroneous assumption that the masculine is more important, which is why I don't want to be a receiver. That's weak. I don't want, and even in sexuality, the sexual conquest, good on you, man. There is no sex without a partner. And the feminine pole of the sexual partner, be it 2 men, 2 women, whatever, is the one receiving the initiation. If they do not receive the initiation, there is no sex. So it's not good on you men, it's good on you couple. But the culture plays this fucked up game where it can say men who have a lot of sexual experience are good and women who have a lot of sexual experience are bad. This is unscientific. This is like saying batteries that are 80% positive charge and 20% negative are good, but batteries that have 80% negative charge and 20% positive charge are bad. They're both fucked up. You don't get synergy without balance. And no scientist will look at an alchemical reaction and say that one particle is more or less valuable or important to the reaction than the other particle. If electricity is the result, the positive and negative pole are equally important. You get the idea. But we have been brainwashed since birth. Feelings weak, thoughts important. Well, this is a bit dumb. Why? Because there is no thought without feeling, and there is no feeling without thought. They interact chemically within the body. You do not do a single thing in your life, and no human being throughout history has done anything, from the inventor of the iPhone to the telephone to the jetliner to whatever it is, without a feeling saying, I want to do that. That's a feeling. That's feminine. And the doing of it is masculine. They are interconnected. That is the definition of a polarity. We are in a polarity reality. So every single part of reality has a masculine pole, a feminine. We're just calling it that. They have two opposite poles, and they create flow together. And within the human species, that's male and female. Within other mammals, it's the same thing. But you have teacher and student. How valuable is a teacher without a student? How good is a teacher if the student isn't learning? You see the problem here. These are integrally connected poles, and yet we have 4,000 years of bizarre cultural brainwashing that's trying to convince us that the negative side of the battery is less important than the positive side of the battery, while holding on to a scientific paradigm that says you can't just make up bullshit like that. You've got to measure it and see the results. But when you measure and see the results, everyone's trying to be the giver, everyone's trying to be the talker, everyone's trying to be the teacher, everyone's trying to give advice, nobody wants to receive advice, everyone's trying to be in the masculine pole, everyone's trying to be the initiator, the one who creates the sale, the top of the organization. Everyone's trying to be in the masculine quadrant because the culture has said if this is masculine, it's worth $10. If it's feminine, it's worth $3. Now, Warren Buffett would buy the $3 stock and say this is overvalued. Because doing the fundamentals, he would say, wait a minute. This doesn't work without this. That means there needs to be more of this for this to work. And this is only $3. They're equal, but this is selling for $3. That's where I'm putting my money. I've spent a lot of time with this particular polarity in thought, and the reason it's important to understand this is that almost all of us, following the Western paradigm and the Western education and career protocol, have overdeveloped our masculine sides, overvalue our masculine sides, and have ignored and underdeveloped our feminine sides in both men and women. This has created an imbalance that leads to suffering and leads to dishonor. It leads to things like women trying to talk faster and over, etc., men, and when stumbling into feelings, apologizing and rushing off. It leads to men when they feel small and hurt about something, not knowing how to deal with the feelings and punching someone. It is a classic, it's a completely predictable situation. In the West, we train people how to be masculine. We do not train people to have be feminine, and we have a lot of violence. And in the tribal environments where this violence doesn't exist, there are still a few tribes where no police force, and there is not any domestic violence. There is no sexual abuse. There is no addiction. And there is balance. These peoples educate their feelings as much as their thoughts, as much as their body. They spend about a third of their cultural energy honoring emotion. They are happier, healthier, destroy the planet less, and the men and women are equal. Now, if we want to dream of a reality that great, we've got to learn that chauvinism doesn't work. It doesn't work to praise someone more for giving than for receiving. It doesn't work to praise someone for teaching more than learning. It doesn't work to talk about ideas more than feelings. It doesn't work to focus on making money more than enjoying life. It doesn't work to have our schedules planned down to the last 20 minutes, weeks in advance, and have no room for spontaneity, the feminine. It doesn't work to date based on political beliefs over the tactile wonder of touch. It doesn't work to think that men are more valuable than women innately, as opposed to more useful for some things and less useful than others. It doesn't work. And I want to invite you, if you'd like, to take, a polarity to see how chauvinistic you are based on which one you'd rather be. Would you rather be the giver, the receiver, the leader, the follower? You see, scientifically, if you've got a great leader, following is smart. It is stupid to try and lead when another leader can do a better job. Except when you are shamed and undervalued for following, and overvalued not for the quality of your leadership, but just that you are the leader. So-and-so made CEO. Big deal. It's a lot of work. Is he or she doing a good job? Is the value of that company going up because they did? That's what matters. And could someone else be doing a better job? Because while cult brainwashing might lead us to think that it's intelligent to jockey for a more powerful position when someone else can do a better job, science says the opposite. Science says defer to the person who can do the best job, that's what leads to a better world. Chauvinism bravado says, no, I can do it better than you. Why? Do you have more training? Do you understand anything more? No, I just can't. I know it. I want to be the leader. I want to do that. You don't have as much experience. Why? I just want to. Well, that's dumb. It's more intelligent to defer and to follow effective leadership. So you can see the problem here. The culture, and then this is also the problem of, for example, leadership and follower inequality. When you get a CEO making $200 million, and the person following and really doing that CEO's work for them is making $10 an hour, you see chauvinism at work again. It is assumed within a chauvinistic paradigm that the leader is more valuable than the follower by the very fact that they are leading, not by the quality of their result. And that's a problem. It hurts everyone. Chauvinism hurts men and it hurts women. It hurts our future. It hurts our relationships. It confuses things. And the biggest pain, that I see in American relationships is that no one wants to be courted. No one wants to listen. No one wants to follow. No one wants to respond. No one wants to defer. No one wants to receive help Everyone wants to be on the masculine pole. Well, what happens? Exactly what happens when you get two positive poles in a battery. They short out and there's no flow. The energy goes down. It's draining. When you have someone that says, hey, let's go do this, and the other person says, I'd love to. Okay. You've got a masculine, initiatory, feminine openness. Yes. How about it? Yes. These are two poles. How about this? No. How about that? No. How about this? Go away. Stop bothering me. You've got nothing. There's no flow. There's no chemistry. Or I'm waiting around. Where's going to be someone saying, how about it? No one's saying anything. What do you want to do? No. What do you want to do? No. What do you want to do? You got nothing. Everything is in the pole. The masculine, the feminine, in a battery, in a cultural exchange, in a romantic situation, in a sexual situation. The most beautiful sexuality is the complete emotional, mental, physical receptivity, opening up to the assertiveness. And it doesn't matter if this is male, male, female, female, whatever. It can be interesting. It can be highly violent to have two masculine people wrestling each other, this, that, and the other. And there's certainly a place for that. But it takes a lot of energy compared to grace and openness. And there needs to be an honor, equal honor, for both sides of the pole. I'm very, very lucky to have an incredibly feminine woman, because while I'm combating chauvinism in myself, I have been raised in the West, like probably you, to be a chauvinist. Not to think that men are better than women, but to think, I went to Toastmasters not to learn how to listen, to learn how to talk. Chauvinism again. If Toastmasters was equal, it would teach listening with the same degree of attention to detail as it would teach talking. And you don't get good listeners in Toastmasters. You get one person after the other comparing what they're going to say. So you get great speakers and few listeners. You get technically educated speakers and you don't get technically educated listeners. It's everywhere. It's unscientific, it's unbalanced. But as we move towards abundance, the cultural lag will catch up. And after women finally are treated as equal as men, we're next going to see that it's no fun both competing to talk, no one listening, both competing to assert, no one saying yes, where it's like, hey, what about this? No, what about this? No, what about this? Where there's this competition energy. Who's going to be able to occupy the masculine? Because the masculine is the one on top. This is a delusion. And it's hell. No one's on top. You think the yin and the yang are on top? The Chinese understood it years ago. It's the partnership between the assertiveness and the receptivity, the speaking and the listening, the muse and the creativity induced by the muse in men and women. Women do not have a corner on the muse, on receptivity, but biologically the female body has an edge, meaning testosterone pushes the male body maybe about 20% more than female bodies towards the masculine energy. And biologically, the female body has that. And transcendence, the birth-giving process, a great transcendent experience gives the females, again, an edge of transcendence, going beyond self, which is another reason mothers can bring an insight and awareness into the world that men cannot. Men have never experienced their body being ruptured to give birth to something completely new. And the trauma, the pain, the transformation, that whole terrain of transcending the self is an area that women have an edge. Women are much less frightened of dying in many cases than men, particularly feminine women, because when you realize that every death is a birth, etc., and you start to have that sense, you experience that going on in your own body, it becomes less terrifying, the unknown. So I'm excited about this. I'm deeply exploring this arena in my own life, and actively, coming from one of the most chauvinistic and some of the most masculine culture in the world, the United States. The United States is not out learning and receiving the gifts from around the world. The United States is out there telling the rest of the world what to do. You should do it, of course, like us. It's not learning, it's not feminine, it's assertive, and it's missing out. Because I'm in Thailand right now, and Thailand receives all the gifts of the United States, but it also holds on to its own gifts, and the United States receives nothing of the 4,000-year-old culture that is Thailand. A culture 10 years older, or 10 times older than itself. It is too enamored with the masculine thing, like we're the ones leading, we're the ones teaching, we want to be in that role because that role is better than the listener. And so the Thais, they're so open to other cultures. But what I learn in Thailand about Thai culture is way more interesting, way more exciting, way more beautiful than what I share. We miss out when we don't value the feminine.